Have you ever had the feeling that no matter how many people you are surrounded by, you still don't seem to exist to anyone, as if your presence wasn't noticed, as if your absence wasn't missed? It's like being in a full room but with an empty heart. The pain of invisibility is not something easy to explain. It doesn't scream, but it gnaws. It does not scandalize, but silences the soul. Maybe you're right there right now, trying to understand why everything seems so far away, why no one really sees you. But what if I told you that there is someone who not only sees you, but knows your name, your story, your most secret thoughts? Someone who never stopped noticing you, even when you forgot yourself. Most people have never realized this, but today they will. There is a name that echoes in eternity, a name that pierces the darkness and whispers in the chaos. Your name, Jesus, speaks to you. Yes, with you, who have been walking in silence, waiting for a look, a word, a confirmation that there is still purpose in your pain. Today, that confirmation arrived. You are not here by chance. Nothing in this message is random. This truth has been ignored by many, but not anymore. Jesus sees what no one sees. He hears what no one else hears. He calls when no one else calls. And there is something he wants you to know. You were never invisible to him. It doesn't matter who discarded you, who ignored you, who hurt you with silence. Jesus was there the whole time, and today he chose this moment to call you by name. Get ready, because what you're going to hear in this video could change the way you see everything. And more than that, it can profoundly transform how you see yourself. Take a deep breath. Open your heart. Something very special is about to be revealed. And when you do, you will understand why Jesus speaks to you, because no one understands your pain like him. No one knows you so well. No one calls you so personally. If this message has already touched your heart, click the like button so that others can also be blessed. Sharing this word is an act of faith. And if you want to declare this out loud, write in the comments, "Jesus sees me." You could be the answer someone is waiting for, so they don't give up today. Take a deep breath and open your heart to this message. You are not here by chance. Jesus has brought you to this moment because there is something he deeply wants to talk to you about. It's not just another video, it's a spiritual calling. It's a meeting between your most hidden pain and the sweetest voice that has ever called you by name. While the world may have ignored you, he has not. And right now, you are being seen, remembered, and loved by the one who has never forgotten you. Therefore, if you have ever felt that this word is touching something inside you, write in the comments with faith, "I trust in Jesus." This declaration may be small to the world, but in the sky it echoes like a cry of hope. And maybe someone reading the comments needs exactly that, a sign to continue. Click the like button if this message is reaching your heart. You can't imagine how many lives can be touched just because you decided to like a video that talks about healing, love, and the presence of God. Your click, your like, is an act of faith. It is a spiritual seed that can blossom in the life of someone who today feels invisible, just as you once did. Share. Spread it out. Evangelize with love. Jesus speaks to you and can speak to many through you. But there is still something that needs to be said. A profound revelation, hidden from the eyes of many, is about to be delivered. Jesus warned something very important about this situation, and you need to hear it before leaving this video. What comes next could change everything. Stay with me, because what is about to happen goes beyond pain, beyond silence, beyond invisibility. It's time to find out what he has to say when the whole world doesn't seem to see you. She was alone. Not alone in presence, but in purpose, in voice, in belonging. He walked through the desert with the heavy belly of a child and a heart full of rejection. Hagar did not choose that path. She was pushed towards him by looks that judged her and words that belittled her. A name that was no longer pronounced with dignity. A story that seemed unwanted, erased. And perhaps that is exactly where you find yourself today, not in a physical desert, but in an emotional desert, surrounded by voices, but ignored where it matters most. surrounded by people, but with a pain that no one seems to see. Hagar, a foreigner, a servant, a woman who carried the mark of exclusion, decided to flee. Not your responsibility, but from humiliation, of contempt, from the constant feeling of invisibility. But in the silence of the desert, someone found her. And it wasn't just anyone, it was God himself. Imagine the scene, the dry wind lifting the sand, the sun burning the skin, and a woman kneeling, exhausted, alone. Most people would have walked right past it. Maybe they wouldn't even notice her, but the sky stopped for her. And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going?" Genesis 16:8. Heaven called her by name. By name. He did not call her servant, the Egyptian, or the pregnant runaway. He called her Hagar. Because when no one else remembers who you are, God remembers. When no one else talks to you, Jesus talks to you. When even you forget that you have value, he calls you by name. And in that divine encounter, something changes. God doesn't just see her, he sends her back with a promise. A promise of multiplication, of the future, of dignity. It is then that Hagar says the words that echo to this day in our greatest pains. "You are the God who sees me." Genesis 16:13. Not the God who only listens to crowds, not the distant, inaccessible God, trapped in rituals, but the God who what you see, that you recognize. How many times have you screamed in silence? How many times have you tried to show your pain, but it was invisible to the eyes of others? Maybe you felt like it doesn't matter, that your story is just one more, that your life will not leave a mark. But what if I told you that there is a God who saw you in every hidden tear, in every sleepless night, in every thought you had and never dared to confess? Jesus speaks to you, and he doesn't just see you. He knows where it hurts. He knows the story that no one told, the abuse that no one knew, the words that silenced you and the looks that diminished you. And yet he says, "I see you." If this word is touching your heart, write in the comments with faith, "Jesus sees me." Because this simple act could be the courage another heart needs to not give up today. It could be the sign someone silently prayed to receive. Your comment could be the encouragement someone needs right now. You may wonder, but why would God speak to me? Why would he call me? The answer is simple and powerful, because you are not invisible to him, because you have a name, because there is something in you that heaven recognizes, and because Jesus doesn't walk straight past those the world forgets. He stops, approaches, and calls. That's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Even deeper pain will be touched. And what comes next? It will change the way you see everything. He was alone, not in an empty room, but in a strange land. It wasn't just the absence of familiar faces, it was the absence of memory, of remembrance, of belonging. Jose, the dreamer, the boy who dared to believe in something greater, had been forgotten, not just for his brothers, but now also for those he had helped. Trapped in a dark, damp, cold place, where days mix with nights and hopes dissolve in time. The silence of the prison echoed louder than any scream, and even with everything he had done, even though he was fair, faithful, loyal, life seemed determined to erase his name. Isn't that how we often feel? As if our struggles were invisible, our pains ignored, our prayers forgotten? Jose was there behind four walls far from his home, with no answers, no visible promises, and yet heaven was writing something. The sacred text says, "The Lord was with Joseph," Genesis 39:2. This phrase, which may seem simple, is a powerful key, because it doesn't say that Joseph understood everything, nor that he was smiling, nor that his days were easy. It just says the Lord was with him, and that presence changes everything. You may be in a place where no one in your family mentions your name anymore. It may have been ignored in conversations, left aside in decisions, forgotten even by those you loved most. But if the Lord is with you, you are not alone. And more than that, you are being remembered in heaven, even as you are forgotten on earth. Jose interpreted dreams, took care of people even when he himself needed to be taken care of. He delivered words of hope even as his own soul cried out for an answer. And when he thought he would finally be remembered, the cupbearer forgot about him. They forgot about him for 2 years. But heaven doesn't forget. God does not have amnesia. Jesus speaks to you even when your own family is silent. And when no one else remembers who you are, he's writing the details of the story that will surprise everyone. And here's the twist. What seemed like forgetfulness was actually preparation. The silence of the prison was the backdrop for the voice that would soon echo in palaces. What was seen as abandonment became the scene of a divine ascension. Joseph came out of prison, straight into the government of Egypt. God didn't just take him from where he was, he put him in a place where no human effort could put him. This is what happens when heaven remembers you. This is what happens when Jesus calls you by name, even when your family no longer recognizes who you are. Have you ever felt this way? As if, even though you did your best, even though you were faithful, you were still forgotten. Have you ever had the feeling that your family only comes to you when they need you, but is never there when you break down? Have you ever looked inside and thought, does anyone still care about me? If you identify with this, don't ignore this moment, because perhaps God brought you here precisely to say, I never forgot you. I'm still with you. And that in itself changes absolutely everything. If this message is touching something deep within you, write in the comments with faith, Jesus is with me. These words are not just a comment, they are a spiritual statement. And it may be that someone, upon reading what you wrote, will find the strength to continue believing. Your faith can rekindle the hope of someone who is on the verge of giving up. Now listen carefully. The fact that you have been forgotten by people does not mean that you have been abandoned by God. Most people don't understand this, but today you are understanding. Human rejection never nullified the divine promise. And when you least expect it, God can transform prison into a throne. What comes next will reveal an unexpected encounter that changed everything. A story about someone who climbed a tree, thinking no one would notice him. But Jesus stopped everything just to look at him. Get ready, because what you're about to hear will change the way you see everything. He was small, not just in stature, but in the concept that people had of him. Zacchaeus was seen as unworthy, as someone who, despite having money, had no respect. He collected goods, but also loneliness. He was a man who smiled to hide emptiness, who imposed power to mask rejection. Society judged him as a thief. Religion shunned him as unclean, and he just carried it all in silence. But there was something inside Zacchaeus that still wanted to be seen, really. Not because of what he owned, nor because of the wrong choices he had made, but because of who he was inside. And then he heard about Jesus. And this simple information, Jesus is going to stop by, sparked hope in him, a hope that pushed him to the edge of the crowd, which made him climb a tree, because somewhere in his tired heart, Zacchaeus still believed he could be noticed. That could be called, imagine the scene, a full street, dust rising from hurried feet, screams, expectations, confusion, and in the middle of it all, a man hanging from a tree. Not for fun, but out of desperation, out of a desire to be seen, for believing that maybe, just maybe, someone would look up. And then, in the middle of that crowd, Jesus stopped. It stopped and looked right at him. Zacchaeus, come down quickly because I need to be at your house today. Luke 19:5. Jesus didn't just see Zacchaeus. He called him by name, out loud, in front of everyone who judged him. He didn't wait for Zacchaeus to change and then be accepted. He accepted before, loved before, called before. Because Jesus speaks to you before you even believe you are worthy of being heard. And here's what maybe no one told you. When Jesus calls you, he doesn't just see what you've done. He sees what you can become. He doesn't ignore the past, but he doesn't reduce you to it either. He sees the wounded heart behind the choices. See the invisible boy who grew up trying to prove his worth. See the rejected girl who learned to hide. He sees you and calls by name. Zacchaeus thought he needed to hide to see Jesus. But Jesus, who sees where no one else looks, chose to stop everything just to lift up the one everyone wanted to forget. Have you ever felt like your life doesn't matter? Have you ever felt like if you disappeared, no one would notice? Have you ever thought, I'm just one of many? What difference do I make? The truth is that the enemy wants to convince you of this, that you are just one more, that no one cares. But there is a God who calls you, not because of what the world says you are, but because of what he knows you carry within yourself. Zacchaeus ran downstairs, maybe with a racing heart, maybe with teary eyes, because when someone calls you by name, when you thought you would be ignored, it changes everything. Jesus entered his house, ate with him. It stayed with him, and at the end of that meeting, Zacchaeus was different. Not because Jesus accused him, but because Jesus loved him so personally, so real, that it transformed him. This is what happens when you are truly seen. When you are remembered in the crowd, when the sky stops just to call you. If you have ever felt like this, invisible, irrelevant, ignored, and this message is touching something deep within you, declare with faith in the comments, Jesus called me by name. Because someone may read what you wrote, and because of you, come back to believe that there is still value in your existence. You can be the instrument to restore the name of someone the world tried to erase. And if this message touched your heart, click the like button so that others can also be blessed. Your like is an act of faith, a way of saying Jesus speaks to me and I want him to speak to others too. Share this video as a gift of hope. You never know who might be waiting for just that. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. A woman who lived on the margins, rejected and avoided by everyone, was chosen to live one of the most intimate and transformative encounters in history. What happens next will change the way you see everything. She went out alone, as she did every day, but this was no ordinary day. It was noon, the sun was at its highest point, the heat was most intense, and the Samaritan woman walked to the well, not because of a lack of water at another time, but out of shame, ashamed of the looks, the murmurs, the labels I carried. She chose the quietest time because she knew no one would be there. He just wanted to get water and go back to his invisible routine. But little did she know that that would be the moment when the sky would tear apart time and find her there in her place of rejection. The woman was not only excluded by the Jews because she was a Samaritan, but also by the city itself. She had already had 5 husbands, and the man she lived with now wasn't even hers. For many, she was just a walking scandal. To Jesus, she was a thirsty soul. Jesus was tired from the journey. The disciples had gone to get food, and so he chose to wait there alone by the well. Waited for her, not by chance, but on purpose. When she approached, Jesus asked for water. She was startled. How can you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? John 4:9. And there begins the dialogue that would change everything. A dialogue that did not begin with judgment, but with a request. A dialogue that did not reduce her to her story, but elevated her to the dignity of being heard, considered, valued. Because Jesus talks to you, especially when no one else wants to talk. He speaks in the midst of your silence, your shame, your pain. While she tried to focus on the bucket and the water, Jesus spoke about the thirst of the soul. From the thirst that no relationship fills, from the thirst that no human acceptance can satisfy. And then, with love and truth, Jesus reveals that he knew everything about her, every mistake, every rejection, every hidden pain. And yet, it was still there, gift, looking into her eyes, not to condemn but to liberate. If you only knew the gift of God, John 4:10, he said, as if to say, if you knew who is before you, you would understand that there is no longer any reason to flee. Because what Jesus offers isn't just comfort, it's a new identity, a new headquarters, a new beginning. This woman, who had previously been hiding, ran back to the city. He no longer cared about the looks, the judgments. Because whoever truly encounters Jesus no longer needs to hide. She became an evangelist, missionary, the first female preacher in Samaria. And it all started because Jesus saw her, because he called her to a dialogue, because he knew the name that she had already forgotten about herself. The Samaritan woman was not a script accident. She was a central part of the plan of salvation, and so are you. Have you ever felt this way? Like your story is too heavy for anyone to approach? As if your scars keep others away before you even open your mouth? Have you ever thought that Jesus only speaks to those who have their lives organized? This story proves you otherwise. He chose to speak to a woman despised by everyone, and he treated her with honor, because Jesus doesn't see the label, he sees the heart. And when he sees truth, even in the midst of pain, he approaches. If this word is stirring something within you, declare with faith in the comments, Jesus saw me at my worst. Because someone might be hiding right now, and they need that testimony to know that they too can be reached. Your declaration could be the first step towards releasing another wounded heart, but what happens next will challenge everything you believed about worthiness. There is a man who thought he was completely unqualified, full of flaws, held back by fear, and it was precisely this man that God chose to lead one of the greatest liberations in history. What you are about to hear will change the way you see everything. He tried to escape. He tried to hide behind justifications, insecurities, questions that disguise the fear of not being enough. Moses was not just a reluctant man. He was a broken man inside. He carried within himself the marks of a fragmented identity, raised as an Egyptian, born as a Hebrew, rejected by some, accused by others. Moses had killed a man, fled, hidden in the desert, assumed a life of invisibility. I had been there for years, living between the ordinary and oblivion. I no longer dreamed of liberation. He no longer imagined that God could still want something with him. Until, in the midst of the pasture and repetitive routine, a bush began to burn without being consumed. And the voice that came from there wasn't ignorant of its history, but it wasn't attached to it either. Moses, Moses, Exodus 3:4. God called him by name, in the middle of the desert, in the middle of the routine, in the midst of fear. Because Jesus speaks to you, even when you have convinced yourself that you no longer deserve to listen. Moses' first reaction was neither gratitude nor praise. It was fear, insecurity. Who am I to go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? Exodus 3:11. It was as if he were saying, Lord, I've made enough mistakes. I've hidden too much. I've lost all credit with heaven and earth. But God did not respond with a resume, nor with empty promises. He said, I will be with you. Exodus 3:12. It didn't matter who Moses was. It mattered who accompanied him. And it is this presence that redefines everything. This is what transforms a shepherd into a liberator of nations, an injured man in healing channel, an invisible instrument of glory. Have you ever felt this way? As if your past has disqualified you? As if the opportunities had already passed, and now all that was left was to watch life happen to others? Have you ever thought that your limitations are the reason why God wouldn't choose you? The story of Moses proves exactly the opposite. God is not looking for the most prepared. He chooses those available. He sees beauty in sincere hearts even when marked by falls, and when Jesus calls, he also equips. Moses said he was stuttering, slow, ineloquent. And yet God gave him words. God gave him signs. God gave him direction, because God's calling never depends on your perfection. It depends on your response. How many times do we hide behind the excuse, I can't do it? How many times do we refuse the call because we think we have failed too much, that we have gone too far, that it is too late? But God specializes in finding the unlikely, in taking a new direction from the burning bush, in using even what was broken to reveal his glory. Jesus speaks to you even when you consider yourself unqualified. He is not impressed by the mistakes you carry. He has already seen the impact that your story can have when redeemed by him. What the world calls a failure, God turns into a testimony. If this message is reaching the depths of your soul, declare in faith in the comments, "I am called, even though I am wounded." Write this as someone who believes, not because you feel strong, but because you understand that it is precisely in weakness that God's power is perfected. Someone might be reading your comment right now and finally find the courage to say, "If God called Moses, maybe he will call me too." And here comes the most impressive part of this story. A woman who was ignored in her own home, despised in the temple, silenced by her husband, but her tears were heard by God. She prayed in silence, cried in secret, but Jesus saw. What is about to be revealed will make you see that, even when no one understands you, heaven still translates your tears. He was not called to the table. He was not remembered by his father. When Samuel the prophet appeared with a flask of oil, saying that among the sons of Jesse was the next king of Israel, David was not there. He wasn't even considered. The father introduced all the other brothers one by one, and when they all passed before the prophet and none was chosen, Samuel asked, "Are there no more young men?" Jesse responded, as if he didn't even consider it important to mention the last one. "The youngest is still missing, who is tending the sheep." 1 Samuel 16:11. The smallest, the forgotten one, the unlikely, the invisible. But God does not forget those whom the world ignores, because Jesus speaks to you even when even those who should know you leave you aside. Now imagine this boy, lonely in the field, far from the celebrations, taking care of sheep in silence while his brothers live with the honorable ones. David was not in the right place in human eyes, but he was exactly where God wanted him. While men sought strength, appearance, and status, God sought a heart. And there, in that field of invisibility, David was shaped. He fought with lions. He played the harp at dusk. He prayed fervently. He poured out his soul before a sky that seemed distant but was attentive. For man looks at what is before his eyes, but the Lord looks at the heart. 1 Samuel 16:7. And when the prophet sent for him, David arrived sweaty, simple, unprepared in the eyes of the world. But it was him. God had chosen him, and he called by name. Have you ever felt too small to be noticed, as if your story were too common, your talent too discreet, your pain too invisible? Maybe you are living exactly what David lived on that field, doing what no one sees, facing struggles that no one recognizes, holding on to hopes that seem silent. But God is watching. He watches you in secret. He knows your sleepless nights, your most confused thoughts, your whispered prayers. And when the time comes, he calls, not because of what you look like, but because of what he planted in you. An available, sensitive, true heart, because Jesus speaks to you not when you show yourself strong, but when you surrender with sincerity. It's amazing how the world teaches us that we need to stand out to be noticed. But God is different. He chooses in secret. He anoints in silence. He prepares in anonymity. And what has the most impact on David's story is that, even after being anointed, he returned to the field. There was no applause, there was no immediate throne, but there was an eternal seal. He had been seen by God, and when God sees you, even if the world ignores you, your story has already been redirected for purpose. If this message is touching your heart, write in the comments, "God sees me where no one looks." Let your comment not be just a sentence, be a testimony. You are not forgotten. You are not too small. You are exactly where the sky can reach you, and your answer today could be the encouragement someone needs to keep believing. Don't be silent. Your faith can unlock the movement of God in the lives of those on the other side of the screen. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. There is a pain that no one notices, hidden behind an armor of strength, and she can even be disguised with a smile. But Jesus, he heals even what you learn to hide. Get ready, because what's coming will confront you and free you at the same time. Naaman was a prominent man, a commander, a war hero. His presence commanded respect. His deeds inspired armies. But behind the armor, there was something he hid from everyone: leprosy, an incurable wound that consumed him in silence. He dressed with pomp, but carried shame. His voice was firm, but his soul trembled. And the hardest part wasn't the physical pain. It was the fact that no one saw it. Or worse, no one can know. Naaman learned to hide his pain, like many today hide what eats them up inside. Fake smiles, happy publications, impeccable routine. But inside, the heart asks for help. And this is where Jesus speaks to you. He speaks where no one touches. He heals what you don't even have the courage to confess. Naaman almost lost his healing because he was offended by the simplicity of the process. The prophet Elisha did not even come out to receive him. He just sent a message. Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored. 2 Kings 5:10. Naaman expected an impressive ritual, a gesture of honor to his position, but God was not speaking to the general. I was talking to the man, with the human being behind the patent, with a wounded heart behind the armor. And this shows us something profound. Our healing often begins when we accept being seen as we are, not as we want to appear. Naaman had to take off his armor, go down to the river, stripping himself of his image to allow God to touch him in what he hid most. How many times do we do the same? We walk with our emotions shielded, with pride supporting our appearance while our soul bleeds. We create a strong character to protect the wounded child that lives inside us. But Jesus speaks to the part you try to forget. He is not impressed with his performance. He knows the tears you hide in your pillow, the traumas you buried, the screams you never dared to utter, and he doesn't judge you. He calls you firmly, with compassion, and sometimes healing comes in forms that the ego rejects. But it always comes because the leprosy of the soul, guilt, loneliness, anxiety, fear, can only be washed away in the Jordan of humility. What is most moving about Naaman's story is not just the healing. It's the fact that it all started with a servant, an unnamed girl, a forgotten slave. She saw his pain and pointed in the direction. Sometimes the answer you need comes from where you least expect it. And perhaps this message will be the voice of that servant for you today, a reminder that no matter how much you hide, Jesus still sees. And more, he still wants to heal. If this word spoke to you, write in the comments, Jesus sees behind my armor. May this comment be the beginning of your liberation. Because someone out there needs to read this to know they are not alone. Your testimony can be the healing of another. And here comes the most impressive part of this story. While Naaman thought leprosy was the problem, God already had his eye on something much deeper, his heart. Because sometimes what makes you suffer is not what God wants to take away. It's what he wants to use to transform you from within. She had no name, at least not in the Gospels. And that, in itself, says a lot, because she didn't have a place either. There was no space. It had no value in the eyes of others. The woman with the flow of blood was treated as impure, invisible, rejected by a culture that saw her as a problem, not as a person. 12 years of bleeding, not just on the inside, but on the outside as well. 12 years isolated, remembered only by pain. A woman who had tried everything, doctors, medicine, prayers, promises, all. And even then it only got worse. It is at this point in life that many give up. When we've tried everything and nothing works, when pain becomes a daily companion and despair whispers that you will live like this forever. But it is in this kind of place that Jesus appears, because it is exactly there at the limit of strength, in the absolute tiredness of the soul, that he is most present. And here comes the part that changes everything. Even surrounded by a crowd, Jesus felt a single touch. The Bible says, and immediately the flow of blood stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her illness. Mark 5:29. But it doesn't end there. Jesus stops. He turns. He asks, "Who touched me?" The disciples are amazed. After all, there were dozens. maybe hundreds of people around, everyone bumping, pressing, touching. But that touch was different. It was from someone who believed, from someone who dared, from someone who, even though she felt impure, invisible, unwanted, still had enough faith to reach out. The woman was not just healed, she was called daughter. Jesus speaks to you. Daughter, your faith has saved you. Mark 5:34, the first and only time he uses this word in the Gospels. And it was with her, with the woman forgotten, ignored, silenced. He didn't just heal your body, he restored your identity. Because sometimes the greatest miracle isn't physical. It's when you remember who you are in God's eyes. How many times have you felt this way? As someone who has no name in the history of others, as someone who has tried everything, but the pain insists on staying. Like someone who hears about miracles, but wonders if it will ever be their turn. What if it is now? What if this message is the moment when Jesus stops, looks, and says, "Who touched me?" What if you are the person he wants to call his daughter today? Not because you did everything right, but because, despite everything, you still have faith. He still extends his hand. He still believes there can be a cure, not in the strength of men, but in the touch of Jesus. If this word is touching your heart right now, write in the comments, "Jesus, I extend my hand." It could be the act of faith that activates the miracle you've been waiting for. And your comment could be what inspires someone else to do the same, because shared faith is multiplied faith. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Because when Jesus calls you daughter, he is saying, "You are no longer known by your pain. Now you are known by my love." Amidst the noise, he screamed, but no one listened. Bartimaeus was used to not being seen, not being heard, being just another person on the side of the road, a blind man, a destitute, a nuisance. At that time, being on the side of the road was more than a physical position. It was a portrait of a social, emotional, and spiritual place. People passed by, but no one stopped. The world continued its course, while he begged for attention, for mercy, for a look. He had no place, no name among those who mattered. Just his pain, his loneliness, and an insistent hope. And when he heard that Jesus was passing by, something in him rose. Not the eyes, but the faith, and he began to shout with everything he had, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." People told him to shut up. They told him not to bother. How many times have they said this to you too? That your pain wasn't relevant, that you were exaggerating, that there are greater sufferings out there. The world seems to measure people's worth based on the noise they make, the way they look, or the influence they carry. But Jesus measures the value of a soul by the cry of the heart. And while the crowd told Bartimaeus to be silent, Jesus stopped. This changes everything. Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." Mark 10:49, in the middle of the crowd, in the midst of urgency, in the middle of the agenda. Jesus stopped because of a man everyone tried to ignore, a man who, to others, was just another number on the sidelines. But for Jesus, he was someone with a name, with value, with destiny, someone who deserved to be called out. Jesus speaks to you. When everyone moves on, he stops. When everyone treats you as invisible, he calls you. He didn't just listen to Bartimaeus, he gave orders for him to be brought into his presence. And then he asked the question that no one expected, "What do you want me to do for you?" It was obvious that this man wanted to see, but Jesus wanted more than to heal his eyes. "I wanted to hear your heart." He wanted to restore his dignity. Because when you're treated like a statistic for so long, you start to feel like your desires don't matter. But Jesus wanted him to say, in his own voice, what his heart had been waiting for years. "Lord, may I see?" The response was immediate. But the miracle was not just physical. The Bible says that Bartimaeus regained his sight and followed Jesus along the way. Because whoever is seen by Jesus never walks alone again. Whoever is called by Jesus is never treated like a number again. He calls you by name, he stops for you, and he asks you today, "What do you want me to do for you?" Do you have the courage to respond? Do you believe he still hears your voice in the crowd? That even if the world tries to silence you, he will still lift you up? If this word is stirring your heart, write in the comments, Jesus, I know that the Lord sees me. And if you know someone who is on the sidelines of life, share this message with them. It could be the beginning of a miracle. And here comes the most impressive part of this story. The crowd that previously told him to shut up now watches Jesus honor him. Because when Jesus calls you, he doesn't just heal you. He changes the course of your story in the face of those who doubted your faith. Gideon did not see himself as important. When the angel of the Lord appeared to him, he was hiding, threshing wheat in the winepress, a place where grapes are trodden, not grain prepared. That image was symbolic. Gideon did what he could in the place he had, like someone who was just surviving. Fear, pressure, lack of perspective. All of this pushed him inside, into the hidden, into anonymity. That's how he saw himself, small, limited, too weak to change anything. And maybe that's how you are now, shrunken inside your own story, thinking that life happens for others. The strong, the prepared, the capable, but not for you. And it was at that exact moment that the sky leaned in to speak to him. The Lord is with you, mighty man. Judges 6:12. These words didn't seem to make sense. Brave? Gideon even doubted his own meaningful existence. If the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? The pain of feeling worthless is a silent wound. You can even continue living, but inside, you carry the feeling that it will never be enough. Who wasn't born for great things, that the world passed you behind and God forgot you along the way. But Jesus speaks to you. He does not see you as you see yourself. He sees who you can become. When Gideon questions his own identity, God does not correct him with criticism. God reaffirms with mission. Go with your strength. But what strength? That of a hidden and fearful man. Yes, because when God calls you, he already sees you from there. He's not tied to yours now. He already visualizes yours later. And that's why he calls you brave, even when you only feel afraid. He calls you the chosen one, even when everything about you screams inadequacy. He calls you by name, even when you feel like one of many. And maybe this is the twist you needed to hear today. Your value is not in your achievements. It's in the eyes of whoever called you. Gideon did not become a hero because he felt strong. He became an instrument because he was reminded of who he was by the one who never forgets who he chose. You don't need to prove yourself to be used. You just need to believe that the one who called you goes with you. It's not about you. It's about him in you. If this message is touching your heart, write in the comments, Jesus, help me to see who I am in you. Your comment could be the quiet encouragement someone needs today. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Because when Jesus calls you from the place where no one sees you, he doesn't just lift you up, he sends you. And that's when everything changes. While Martha was busy with household chores, Mary did something unthinkable for her time. She sat at the feet of Jesus, in the midst of men, in the midst of silence, in the midst of judgment. She didn't say much, she just stayed there, present, at his feet, and at that moment she was misunderstood even by her own family. Lord, don't you mind that my sister lets me serve alone? Martha complained, frustrated, and Jesus answered something that broke all expectations. Mary chose the good part, and it will not be taken away from her. Luke 10:42. You know that feeling of doing your best and still being misunderstood, the pain of loving in a way that few understand, to surrender without applause, to obey in silence, of keeping faith when everything around requires you to abandon it. This is the pain of misunderstood surrender. And maybe you're feeling this right now, as if his devotion were invisible, as if your loyalty had no voice, as if you are alone in the way you seek Jesus, while others live in the noise of performance and rush. But Jesus speaks to you. He sees your surrender. He defends his choice. And he honors you when others don't understand. because for him, being at his feet is not a waste of time. It is a priority. Maria didn't say a word, but her posture screamed faith, trust, love. And Jesus validated her before everyone. This shows us something profound. When we feel small in the eyes of men, he lifts us up with his own. How many times have you had your devotion mistaken for weakness? How many times have you been told that you are doing little, that your delivery is worthless, because it is not noisy? Jesus says otherwise. What you do in secret, he sees. What you hold in your soul, he honors. What you offer with your heart, he does not forget, because he does not measure your worship by the quantity of words, but by the depth of the presence. If this word touched your heart, write here in the comments, Jesus, I choose your presence. Your choice could be the silent testimony someone needed to see today. And here comes the most impressive part of this story, because when Jesus validates your choice, he doesn't just defend you. He gives you something that no one can take away, the good part, and that remains. In the Garden of Gethsemane, the silence of the night was thick, almost suffocating. The trees seemed silent witnesses to the most intense battle of Jesus' soul. He knew what he was about to face. I knew the weight of the cross, the physical pain, the humiliation, but there was something that cut deeper: loneliness. He had taken 3 of his closest friends with him to pray. "Stay here and watch with me," he said. But they slept. And for the 3rd time, Jesus returned and found them asleep, as if the most critical moment in the history of humanity was invisible to their eyes. And then he said, "My soul is deeply grieved, even to the point of death." Matthew 26:38. Have you ever felt this way? Abandoned when you needed it most? As if no one saw the hurricane inside you? As if, in the moments when you cried out most for help, the world was sleeping around you? This is the pain of abandonment at the most difficult time, and it is more common than you might think. But the most shocking thing is that even Jesus, the Son of God, experienced this pain. And that changes everything, because when you feel like no one understands what you're going through, Jesus does. Not like someone imagines, but as someone who lived. He sweated drops of blood that night, and there were no friendly shoulders. There were no hugs, there were no outstretched hands. Just loneliness, and yet he stayed. He prayed, he didn't run away. He remained on purpose, because he knew, even when everyone abandons you, God remains. Even when everything goes dark, the Father still sees. Even when no one is by your side, there is an entire sky looking at you. Now stop for a moment and allow yourself to feel. How many times have you experienced your own Gethsemane? That night, the phone didn't ring. The dawn when you cried in silence. The day there was no answer. The people you expected didn't come, but Jesus came. He knows the weight of abandonment, and that's why he calls you by name today. Because he knows what it's like to be surrounded and yet to be alone. If you have ever experienced moments like this, write in the comments, "Jesus, I know you are with me." This could be the echo of faith that will reach someone who today feels like they can't take it anymore. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed, because when Jesus faced abandonment, he was preparing the way so that you would never be left alone again. The entrance to the cave was dark, almost like a portal to the end of hope. Elijah, the prophet who had faced kings, defied false gods, and seen fire come down from heaven, now hid there. He was no longer the same man. He didn't feel stronger. He no longer felt seen. It was as if everything had been in vain, as if no one cared, as if not even God was listening. He desired death. I wanted to disappear. I wanted silence. But what he got was a question, and that question changed everything. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" 1 Kings 19:9. It wasn't an accusation. It was an invitation to honesty. A call to open your heart. Elijah had won external battles, but now he was fighting an internal war. The war of those who give everything and still feel alone. The war of those who are strong for everyone, but weak inside. The war of those who need to hide because they feel that showing themselves will disappoint. But God met him there. God didn't let him sink. God entered the cave, and not with thunder, not with earthquakes, not with spectacles. God came in a whisper, a gentle breeze. Because when you're broken, shouting hurts, but a whisper heals. And the whisper said, I'm still with you. How many times have you been to this same cave? Maybe not with stone walls, but with walls in the heart. Those days when everything seems too heavy and no one notices. You keep smiling, you keep delivering, you keep serving, but inside you're fading away. And one wonders, does anyone really see? Does anyone still care? Jesus sees, and he calls you today. Not with demands, but with tenderness. Not to expose you, but to lift you up. If this message spoke to you, comment, Jesus, meet me in my cave. Your silent testimony may be the echo that awakens another soul in the dark. And here comes the most amazing part of this story. God didn't just restore Elijah. He gave him a new mission, a new direction, a new anointing, because God doesn't just heal, he commissions. He renews. He calls you back to life. When everyone thinks it's the end, he says, get up. It's not over yet, because Jesus speaks to you. Especially when you feel invisible, he whispers your name into your pain. She was dragged into the center of the crowd. Humiliated, judged, exposed. His eyes, which had previously shone with life, were now opaque with fear, with shame, with the certainty that this would be his end. The adulterous woman had no name for the Pharisees, just a mistake, a sin, a public scandal. She was not taken as someone, but as something, an object of accusation, an example to be stoned. And there, in the midst of the dust, the ready-made stones and the pointed fingers, there was a single presence that did not condemn her, Jesus. He didn't scream, he didn't accuse. He ducked, he wrote on the floor, and with a simple gesture, he silenced the world's hatred. Let him who is without sin among you cast the first stone. And one by one, they let the stones fall. Because in the face of the truth, there is no mask that can resist. When everyone was gone, only she and Jesus remained. And then he looked at her, not as the world saw her, but as heaven always saw her, with mercy. Woman, where are your accusers? Has no one condemned you? No one, Lord. Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. John 8:11. This scene burns your heart because it's about you, about those who have already been defined by their mistakes, about those who carry a past, like a label that no one lets you forget. Maybe you haven't been taken to a square, but how many times have they judged you in silence? How many times have you punished yourself for things that have already been forgiven by God, but that you can't let go of? Guilt has a cruel voice. But the love of Jesus is higher. It doesn't define you by what you did, but by who you are. And even more so, for who you can become. If this word spoke directly to your heart, comment now. Jesus calls me to a new beginning. It's not just a commentary, it's a prophetic declaration of liberation. There is something even more powerful in this encounter. Jesus doesn't just forgive her. He returns her to life. He doesn't say, now go and hide. He says, go, because his love is not a safe cell, it is an open door. Jesus' forgiveness does not bind us to the past. It frees us for the future. And when you feel invisible, carrying marks of what you've already experienced, thinking that your story has been erased by mistakes, remember, Jesus speaks to you. He sees you beyond your fault, beyond your faults, beyond what they said about you. He calls you by name, and the name he pronounces is son, daughter. Forgiveness, new life. Go live. Start over. Because for Jesus, it's never too late to write a new story. The scene is brutal, silent, and full of pain. 3 crosses rise against the sky of Jerusalem. In the center, the Son of God. To the left and right, 2 thieves. Men who, in society, were nothing more than human errors nailed to wood, convicted not only for their crimes, but for the indifference of the people who watched them die. No dignity, no name, no chance of redemption in the eyes of the world. And there, in that moment of agony, where life escapes drop by drop, one of them dares something that almost no one understands. He talks to Jesus. Not to mock, not to complain, but to ask a simple, direct, and faith-filled request. Jesus, remember me when you enter your kingdom. Luke 23:42. And the answer was a punch in the silence of death. Today you will be with me in paradise. Luke 23:43. This changes everything. Because there was a man on the verge of the end, despised, erased from everyone's memory, but remembered by Jesus, called by name. Visa, rescued at the last moment. He didn't have time to prove anything, to remake his life, to build a legacy, but all it took was a look, a recognition, a surrendered heart, and Jesus called him close. Maybe you're feeling this way today, irrelevant, as if your story was no longer worth telling, as if I had spent too much time in error, too far from God, and now all that's left is to survive the little that's left. But Jesus doesn't think like that, because Jesus speaks to you. And he doesn't speak based on what people say about you, but based on what he sees inside you. He sees your heart, even when your mouth can no longer pray. He hears your thoughts, even when you feel forgotten, even by yourself. He calls you by name, even when everyone else calls you by your mistake. The thief on the cross teaches us that it is never too late to be achieved by grace. It's never too little to be seen. It is never the end when Jesus is present. You may have wasted years of your life trying to prove something, trying to fix something, trying to be accepted. But in that moment between today and eternity, Jesus reaches out and says, "Today, with me in paradise," not out of merit, but out of mercy. Because to Jesus, you still matter. If this message spoke to you, write in the comments, "Jesus, remember me." Your comment could be the bridge between you and the voice that never stopped calling you. And here comes the most impressive part. Even though he was arrested, the thief was free. Even crucified, he was exalted. Even though he was despised, he was chosen. Jesus not only received him, but promised to be with him. This shows us that what connects us to Christ is not what we do with our hands, but what we give with our heart. Your relevance is not in how much you produce or how much you are seen by others. It's in the fact that the King of Kings looks at you, even in your worst moments, and says, "I want you with me." So take a deep breath. Allow yourself to feel this truth. You are not forgotten. You are not too late. You are not invisible. You are called by name. He was sitting at the table, but there was no celebration in his heart. His eyes, accustomed to figures, no longer saw their own value. It was Levi, the tax collector, a name that carried with it not only the weight of the profession, but the shame of having been labeled traitor, burglar, unclean. That's how they saw him. That's how they judged him. And over time, Levi began to believe. He became what they said he was, a man trapped by labels, living on the edge of acceptance. He had money, but not respect, power, but not dignity. I was surrounded by people, but overwhelmed by a loneliness disguised as convenience. Because when all they see in you is your mistake, even the mirror returns you as a stranger. But then Jesus passed by, not with the eyes of the Pharisees, nor with the contempt of neighbors. Jesus did not avoid Levi. Jesus saw him. He saw beyond the table, beyond the taxes, beyond the luggage. And he said, "Follow me," Luke 5:27. Just that, 2 words, but said with a power that disintegrates invisible chains. Because follow me is not just an invitation, it's a recognition. It's Jesus saying, "I know who you are, and yet I want you with me." And Levi, he got up, dropped everything. And the man who was once known for collecting taxes became known for writing one of the most read Gospels in history, Matthew. That's right. The label became a testimony. Contempt became a mission. The man who was seen as unworthy was called by name. Now look at you. How many times have you been reduced to a label? Weak, problematic, anxious, difficult, impure, deviated, as if your identity was tied to a single pain, a failure, an isolated chapter of your story, as if the world is determined to label you for what you've done and not for what you can be. But today, Jesus speaks to you, and he doesn't call you what they say you are. He calls you by the name that heaven knows. He doesn't see a label in you, he sees promise. If this word found you where no one else can, write in the comments, "Jesus called me by name." Your comment can be a cry for freedom that inspires other lives to break away from what holds them back. And here comes something that could change everything. Maybe you've been trying to be accepted for years, trying to adapt, trying to hide parts of you to fit in. But Jesus doesn't want an edited version of his story. He wants you whole, with flaws, with past, with doubts, because he knows that there is no name that the world can give you that is greater than the purpose he has prepared for you. Levi did not have to go through a purification process to follow Jesus. He just got up and went. This means that what qualifies you is not what you correct. It is the voice that calls you. And if that voice echoes in your heart today, it's because he is still passing through where you are. It doesn't matter if it's an emotional tax table, a place of shame, a cycle that never seems to end. When Jesus calls you, everything can be redone. You are not tied to the labels they have placed on you. You are free to live what heaven has already declared about you. And Jesus has already taken the first step. He looked at you, he called you, he chose you, and he is calling you now. He was there in the synagogue, silent in his corner, the withered, atrophied right hand hidden under the clothes, as if someone harbors shame where everyone only sees normality. He didn't shout, he didn't beg, he didn't interrupt. It just existed. And yet, it was as if it wasn't there, invisible, ignored by a religious system that celebrated form but despised fragility. The Pharisees were attentive, but not to welcome, but to accuse. And Jesus, he was there too. But he didn't look past it. He stopped, observed, and he did what no one dared to do. He looked straight at that man. And then he said, "Get up and come into the midst," Luke 6:8. This sentence broke centuries of silence. It cut through the room like thunder in a clear sky, because Jesus didn't just recognize that man, he put him at the center, where everyone could see, where no one could pretend it wasn't happening, where there was no way to continue ignoring the pain. And this is where everything changes. Jesus didn't heal that man in the corner. He called him to the middle, because when the world marginalizes you, Jesus centralizes you. He puts you in the focus of grace. He transforms invisibility into testimony. The man who was just a detail in the crowd was now the stage for divine intervention. And when he extends his hand, the same one that was once a source of shame, it is restored. Fully, publicly. Now think about it. How many times have you felt this way? Hidden, forgotten, trying to disguise what is broken in you? How many times has your spiritual, emotional, or even physical pain been silenced by religious views that judge more than they welcome? You can be in the right environment, like that man was in the synagogue, but still feel completely out of place. The church saw the error, but Jesus saw the heart. Religion saw the deformity, but Jesus saw the opportunity. If this message spoke to your heart, comment now, "Jesus takes me out of the shadow." Your comment could be the confirmation someone else needs to understand that they are not alone. There is something powerful happening when Jesus calls you into the midst. It's not exposure, it's redemption. It's not humiliation, it's liberation. He doesn't call you downtown to embarrass you. He calls you to restore what has been neglected for too long. What was pain will now be used as a visible miracle. What you hid, Jesus wants to heal publicly, because there is someone watching you, and your healing will be the answer he didn't even know he needed. Jesus speaks to you when you feel invisible, even in the place where you should be welcomed. He sees you, he calls you, it positions you, and when he says, "Come into the middle," it's because your story is about to change before everyone's eyes. You were not born to live on the sidelines. You were born to carry the shine of grace at the center of God's plan. And this call today is for you. Martha was desperate. Time had defeated his faith. His brother Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. The house, once full of hope, now carried the weight of grief, that bitter silence that only those who have lost someone know. It was the kind of pain that doesn't scream, but suffocates. And even though she knew that Jesus was their friend, even though she knew that he loved Lazarus, Martha felt that he had arrived too late. When she finally sees him, she says, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." There is no revolt in these words, there is sadness. A silent sadness, the kind you carry smiling on the outside, but crying on the inside. And Jesus, faced with that pain, did not give a theological explanation, did not give a sermon, did not point out a moral lesson. He cried. John 11:35 says, Jesus wept. This is the shortest verse in the Bible, but perhaps one of the most powerful. Because he cried, even though he knew that Lazarus would be resurrected. He cried not out of despair, but out of empathy, out of compassion. Because before healing your pain, Jesus feels it with you. He doesn't ignore the hidden tears, the muffled screams, the weight in your chest that you carry in the silence of the morning. He doesn't speed up the process to show power. He stops halfway to show presence. And maybe you're living in exactly that kind of moment. That phase of life where people say, it will pass, but you feel like it won't. Where everyone around you seems to be moving forward, but inside you it's still dark. You smile in public but break down when you're alone. People think you're fine because you learn to pretend. But Jesus knows your tears, even the ones you swallowed. He knows the sadness that you never had the courage to tell anyone, and more, he cares about her. Jesus speaks to you. When you carry silent sadness, he doesn't just notice, he feels it with you. He enters your pain before taking you out of it. He cries before saying, get up. He approaches your broken heart before even talking about healing. This changes everything because it shows that you were never truly alone. Even when no one heard you, even as the world moved on, even when the grief lasted longer than expected, Jesus was there, in the silence, in the dark, in mourning. If this message touched your heart, click the like button so that others can also be blessed. And in the comments declare with faith, Jesus cries with me, but he also lifts me up. Your comment could be the encouragement someone needs today. The pain may last all night, but the promise is still the same. Joy comes in the morning. And when Jesus goes to the tomb, he doesn't go to say goodbye. He goes to bring life back. When he says, Lazarus, come out, he is saying that it doesn't matter how long something seems dead. If he speaks, it comes to life. If he calls, respond. If he rises, nothing remains buried. Neither do you. Martha's mourning ended in a miracle. But before the miracle, there were tears. And that's what you might need to understand today. Jesus doesn't rush you. It doesn't run over your process. He enters your story at the right pace for you. And when he says, take away the stone, it is because the time has come to transform your sadness into testimony. The sadness you carry in silence today could be the visible miracle of tomorrow. It was as if the sky had fallen silent. The people of Israel, exiled, oppressed, injured, felt the weight of irreversible abandonment. There was no more temple. There was no more land. There were no more songs of joy in Jerusalem. All that was left was memory. Remembering promises that now seem too distant to be real. Memory of a God who used to speak, but now was silent. The question that hammered hearts was just one. Has God forgotten us? Isaiah, upon hearing this collective lament, writes a response that cuts through the silence like a sword of light. Can a woman so forget the child she brings up that she has no compassion on him, the child of her womb? But even if she were to forget, yet I will not forget you. Isaiah 49:15. This is not just a theological statement. It is a cry of love that breaks through the walls of hopelessness. Because God is not a distant observer, nor an indifferent judge. He is a Father who never forgets, even when everything seems to point to the opposite. Even when life says you were left behind, even when your faith falters, He still calls you by name. How many times have you felt this way, as if He had been forgotten by God? As if the prayers didn't go beyond the ceiling, as if the days were repeating themselves without purpose. You see others advancing, achieving, celebrating, and you wonder if there is something wrong with you. You feel forgotten even by the faith that once moved you. But what if I told you that God's silence is not absence, but construction, that He has not forgotten you? Is He preparing the exact moment when He will whisper your name back to hope? Jesus speaks to you, not with shouts, but with presence, not with formulas, but with love that crosses time. And you know what's more powerful? He doesn't just know you, He marks you. Isaiah 49:16 adds, "Behold, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands." This is more than memory. It's belonging. It doesn't matter what they took from you. It doesn't matter who left you, who rejected you, or how irrelevant your story seems now. God doesn't just remember you, He has recorded you in Him. If this message spoke to your heart, comment, "I am remembered by God." This simple act could be the reminder that someone on the other side of the world needs to keep believing. And if it touched your soul, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your action can reach someone who right now is feeling forgotten. The truth is, while you think you are being forgotten, God is writing details of your reunion with the promise. He's preparing the ground for your feet to return to solid ground. He's designing the rebirth of His identity. Because you are not the exile, you are the chosen one. You are not the forgotten one. You are the remembered one. You are not on the sidelines. You are engraved in the palm of His hand. And here comes the most stunning moment, when all seems lost, when the walls have fallen and the voices have stopped. God doesn't just speak, He calls you back. And the name He pronounces is not the name of your pain, it is the name of your destiny. He does not say the wounded, the fallen, the forgotten. He says, "Son, my daughter, beloved, chosen," because Jesus speaks to you even when you think He's no longer listening. And when He speaks, even the desert blooms, even the tired soul rises. Even those who were exiled return home. You may not have all the answers right now, but there is one certainty that needs to take over your heart right now. God never forgot you, and when He says, "I will never forget you," He is not comforting you with poetry. He is reassuring you with truth, a truth that sustains. What a liberator, what transforms, and that above all, calls you by name. If you've come this far, it's because God is working in your life. Nothing happens by chance. Maybe you started this video feeling invisible, forgotten, crushed by pain that no one sees. But along this journey, something began to change. A soft but firm voice began to speak within you. It wasn't a human voice, it was Jesus. It was Him saying that even when you felt completely alone, He saw you. When you screamed in silence, He heard you. When He thought about giving up, He was holding the thread of His hope. You are not a mistake, you are not a chance, you are not the rest of the line. You are plan, you are choice, you are love, you are seen, remembered, and called by name. Every story you've heard here isn't just about ancient characters from the Bible. They are mirrors of your own pain. Elijah in the cave, the adulterous woman, the thief on the cross, Isaiah in exile. All of them, just like you, have gone through deserts where it seemed like God was gone. But it was precisely in these deserts that the Lord appeared, not with condemnation, but with a calling to life, for restoration, for rebirth. Jesus speaks to you. He calls you now. And He doesn't call for what they did to you. He doesn't call you rejected, hurt, broken. He calls you son, of daughter, beloved, of chosen. You need to keep this in your spirit. God has never forgotten you, not for a second. You have always been in His hands, recorded, marked, saved. Now take a deep breath, because the time has come to surrender all of this to Him. Close your eyes if you can. Place your hand on your heart. Let's pray together. Lord, at this moment I stand before your presence with each person who is here with me now. Father, you know the silent pain, the dark days, the muffled screams. You know how many times that heart has been ignored, mistreated, forgotten. But today, in your name, I declare no more emotional exile. No more carrying labels, blame, shame. May every spiritual chain of rejection, abandonment, invisibility be broken now by the power that is in the name of Jesus. Free, Lord, this soul. Restores that identity. Play where no one else has been able to play. And that, from today onwards, that person knows they are seen, she is remembered, she is called by name. And may no lie from the enemy have any more power over her life. May your love, Jesus, fill every void. And may that person never forget that the Lord speaks to them always. In the name of Jesus, amen. If you prayed with me now, write in the comments, I made it to the end. This could be the sign that someone else needs to surrender to. Share this message with someone who needs an urgent word. You can be the instrument God wants to use today. And if this word reached you, if something inside you was restored, if the Holy Spirit spoke directly to your heart, subscribe to the channel now. Here, each video is a continuation of what God is building in you. It's not just content. It's care, it's healing, it's transformation. And listen to this with all your attention. The video that is appearing on your screen now is the continuation of this message. Don't leave without watching. Why, what you will hear in it could be exactly what was needed for your total liberation. Something you couldn't even imagine, but that will seal what God began to do today. Jesus speaks to you, and he's not finished yet. Share, comment, sign up. Be part of it. You are not alone. Never was. Call to me, and I will answer you, and I will tell you great and sure things that you do not know. Jeremiah 33:3.